All right, let's jump into something most people just skip right over, terms and conditions. But not just any terms and conditions. These are from Soho House, that global network of exclusive members clubs where the creative elite supposedly hang out. So think velvet ropes, rooftop pools, and maybe a celebrity sighting or two. The question is, what kind of legal agreements actually govern this carefully curated world? You sent us their terms and conditions document, so let's unlock this thing and see what's really going on.
Right away. What's interesting is how they establish their control. Soho House UK Limited is the name, registered in England and Wales. They even give you the company number right up front, like they're saying, we're transparent, but we're also in charge.
And they really drive that point home with the last updated date, March 23rd, 2020, if you're keeping track. So, imagine you're about to post that perfect shot by the pool, thinking you're going viral. But hold up, the rules might have changed since you last checked. That's lesson 1 in the Soho House digital sphere. Always make sure you're playing by the latest set of rules.
It makes you wonder about the power dynamic here. Imagine getting your account, which is basically your key to this exclusive online community, revoked because you missed a tiny terms update. It's a reminder that access to this world, even digitally, is at their discretion.
Yeah. And speaking of accounts, they're pretty specific about what you can and can't do with your username. No impersonating other members, no offensive language, basically. Keep it classy, or you're out.
Which reinforces this idea of a curated online experience. They want to control not only the physical spaces, but also the digital atmosphere, ensuring it aligns with their brand image.
It's like their online space is an extension of their physical clubs. Exclusive, controlled, and always reflecting that Soho House vibe. But here's the kicker. They can terminate your account at any time, without even giving you a reason.
Think about that for a second. You could be a model member, posting the most aesthetically pleasing content, racking up likes and connections, and suddenly, poof, you're gone. It really makes you think about how much control they wield.
Okay. Let's talk about something you probably encounter every time you visit their website or app. The content. We're talking about those perfectly filtered photos, the videos with that signature Soho House music, even the text describing their latest events.
And here's where the ownership gets interesting. All of that, and I mean all of it, belongs to either Soho House or their licensors. They are incredibly protective of their intellectual property, republish anything without their permission. And you might be facing more than just account termination.
It makes you wonder, have you ever scrolled through their Instagram and thought, I could totally recreate this aesthetic in my own backyard? Well, legally speaking, not so fast. They've got a whole section dedicated to trademarks. Soho House, Cowshed, Saucony's, all fiercely guarded. It's like they're saying you can admire it, you can experience it, but don't even think about replicating it.
It's a classic move for any brand built on exclusivity. They're creating a sense of scarcity, something you can't just find anywhere else.
Right. And it extends beyond just names and logos. They're protecting the entire look and feel of their brand. Now, have you ever been browsing the Soho House website and clicked on a link that takes you to, say, an article about a member's latest project or a cool new design trend? Those third-party links are everywhere. But here's where things get a bit tricky.
They make it very clear that they're not responsible for what you find on those external websites. It's like they're saying, we'll point you in an interesting direction, but once you leave our carefully curated space, you're on your own.
So it's a reminder to be mindful, even when you're clicking on something that seems connected to the Soho House world. Those external websites have their own sets of rules, their own privacy policies, and potentially their own risks.
It's like venturing outside the Soho House bubble, where things might not be as polished or predictable. You're stepping into the wild west of the internet, and you need to be prepared.
All right, so we've talked about accounts, content, and those tempting third-party links. But let's get to the heart of what it means to be part of this digital community. Acceptable conduct. It's like the digital equivalent of their dress code. But instead of no ripped jeans, it's no illegal activities, no impersonating others, and absolutely no spamming.
This is where they really spell out their commitment to creating a safe and respectful online environment. They even call out specific behaviors like posting harmful content, harassing other users based on their identity, and collecting personal information without consent. It's all about maintaining that carefully constructed sense of community and belonging.
It's almost like they're saying, be cool, be respectful, and for goodness sake, don't ruin the vibe.
Exactly. Remember, this is an extension of their brand, and they're incredibly protective of their image. They're trying to create a digital space that feels exclusive, aspirational, and, dare I say, a little bit elite.
And that exclusivity extends to how they deal with copyright claims. They have a very specific process laid out, following the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, or DMCA for short.
It's a way to address copyright infringement in the digital age. And they're pretty serious about it. If you think someone's using your work without permission, you have to follow their steps, providing all the necessary details.
It's a good reminder that even in the seemingly glamorous world of curated content and exclusive access, there are legal realities to consider.
Copyright law is complex, and these terms lay out the framework for addressing potential disputes. It's not just about protecting their content, but also ensuring that everyone plays by the rules.
So, you've got your perfectly curated Instagram feed, you're engaging in stimulating conversations, and maybe even rubbing shoulders with some creative bigwigs in the comments section. But here's the thing, and this is where things get a bit sobering. Soho House makes it very clear that they aim for accuracy and functionality on their digital platforms, but they don't actually guarantee it.
This is where their liability comes into play,
Yeah.
or rather, the limitations of their liability. They're essentially saying, we're doing our best, but things can go wrong, and we're not necessarily responsible.
So, what does this all mean for you, dear listener? It means that using their digital platforms, whether it's their website or their app, is ultimately at your own risk.
It underscores the importance of being a critical and informed user, understanding the limitations of any online platform.
Nay. This next section might seem a bit intimidating, but it's crucial to understand, especially if you're an active user of their platforms. It's all about indemnification, basically, and I'm simplifying this a bit. You agree to protect Soho House from any claims arising from your use of their digital properties.
It's a way for them to protect themselves from legal headaches. If you post something that gets them sued, you're essentially on the hook.
Think of it this way. Before you share that controversial opinion, or post that photo that might be pushing the boundaries, remember that you could be held responsible if things go south.
It's a reminder that our actions in the digital world can have real-world consequences, and we need to be aware of the potential liabilities we're taking on.
Of course. We can't forget about the big one, personal information. The terms remind us that our data is handled according to their privacy policy, which, let's be honest, is probably a whole other deep dive waiting to happen.
Absolutely. The privacy policy is where they lay out the specifics of how they collect, use, and protect your data. It's a must-read for anyone concerned about their online privacy.
But here's a thought. Even if you're meticulous about reading every privacy policy, are you really in control of your data in this digital age?
It's a question worth pondering. The way we interact with online platforms, the data we share, the traces we leave behind, all of it contributes to a complex ecosystem of information that's often beyond our individual control.
All right, let's shift gears and talk about ending the party, both you, as the user, and Soho House can decide to terminate the agreement.
But here's where it gets interesting. If you decide to come back, maybe after a brief digital detox or a real-world adventure, you're agreeing to whatever version of the terms exists at that moment. And let's be honest, they're probably going to be different from the ones you originally agreed to.
It's a reminder that these digital platforms are constantly evolving, and their terms of use are a moving target. Staying informed is an ongoing process.
So, it's not a one-time I agree and you're done situation. You need to be aware that the rules of the game can change, and it's your responsibility to keep up.
And speaking of more rules, just when you thought we were done with policies, there's more. They briefly mention a privacy policy and a cookie policy, urging us to check those documents for all the nitty-gritty details on data and tracking. It's like a never-ending maze of legal documents.
But don't get overwhelmed. It's about empowering yourself with the knowledge to make informed decisions about your online activity. You have the right to know how your data is being used and to make choices that align with your values.
Okay, before we wrap up this part of our deep dive, there's one last thing you need to be aware of. Thinking about buying that stylish Soho home armchair you saw on their website, or booking a table at Cecconi's through their app, well, be prepared for even more terms and conditions.
It's like a legal Russian doll situation. Purchases often come with their own sets of rules and agreements, adding another layer of complexity to the already intricate Soho House legal landscape.
So, before you click buy on that chic lamp or reserve your spot at the hottest new restaurant, take a moment to read the fine print. You might be surprised by what you discover lurking in the depths of those additional terms.
It's about being a savvy consumer and understanding the full scope of your commitments before you make a purchase.
All right, We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive, but the journey through Soho House's legal documents isn't over yet. Stay tuned for part 2, where we'll unravel more of those legal intricacies and see what other surprises we can unearth.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the world of Soho House's terms and conditions. We're about to venture into territory where most people's eyes would glaze over. Legal lingo and clauses that seem straight out of a law textbook. But trust me, understanding these details can reveal a lot about how this exclusive club operates.
So, we're about to unpack some legal jargon, but fear not, dear listener. We'll make sure you don't need a law degree to understand what's going on.
First up, we have a section on invalidity and waiver, which basically means that if a court decides that a part of the terms is unenforceable, for whatever reason, the rest of the agreement still holds up. It's like a safety net for their legal framework.
Okay, so they've got all their bases covered, legally speaking. But what about waivers? Those situations where you might want to say, hey, I know the rules say this, but can we make an exception? Well, according to the terms, any waiver has to be in writing. No handshake agreements or casual side deals in this exclusive world.
It speaks to their emphasis on formality and control. Everything is documented, leaving no room for ambiguity or misinterpretation.
And then we have the force majeure clause. Now, this might sound like something out of a superhero movie, but it's actually a legal term that covers situations beyond their control. Think natural disasters, pandemics, maybe even a global internet outage.
It's essentially a way for them to say, hey, if something truly catastrophic happens, that prevents us from upholding our end of the bargain. We're not liable.
Yeah. So, if a hurricane wipes out the Soho beach house in Miami, they're not going to be held responsible for not providing you with that oceanfront view you booked.
Exactly. It's a common clause in many contracts. But it's interesting to see how it plays out in the context of this exclusive members club. It's a reminder that even in a world of carefully curated experiences, some things are simply beyond their control.
Okay. Let's talk about transferring the agreement. What happens if Soho House decides to sell part of its business, or maybe the entire company?
Well, they have the right to transfer this agreement to another organization. But don't worry, they're obligated to inform you about it, and your rights under the terms shouldn't be affected.
So imagine, you're a member, you've paid your dues, you're enjoying all the perks, and suddenly, there's new management. It's a reminder that even in this seemingly exclusive world, business transactions can happen, and ownership can change hands.
It highlights the fluidity of the business landscape, even for a brand as iconic as Soho House. But the terms ensure a degree of continuity for the members, assuring them that their rights will be respected, even if the ownership changes.
All right, this next clause might make some members a little nervous. Delay in enforcement, basically. Even if Soho House doesn't immediately take action against a violation, they can still come after you later.
Think of it like this. If you're late on your membership dues, they might not suspend your account right away, but that doesn't mean you're off the hook. They can still demand payment and enforce the terms of the agreement, even if they've given you some leeway.
It's a reminder that their rights under the agreement remain in effect, even if they choose to exercise flexibility in certain situations. Now, for those of you who enjoy the finer points of legal technicalities, let's talk governing law. Soho House states that the laws of England and Wales generally apply to any disputes arising from these terms.
Which makes sense. Considering their headquarters and primary business operations are in the UK, it's a matter of legal jurisdiction and ensuring consistency in how their agreements are interpreted.
But they also acknowledge that certain jurisdictions might have local laws that take precedence. It's all about navigating the complexities of international legal frameworks and ensuring compliance with local regulations.
It's a reminder that even a global brand like Soho House has to operate within the legal boundaries of each country where they have a presence.
And now, for the moment we've all been waiting for, dispute resolution. This is where things get really interesting, folks.
They offer 2 pathways for resolving disputes, depending on where you're located, if you're in the UK or Europe. They encourage alternative dispute resolution, or ADR for short.
So, instead of going through the hassle and expense of a full-blown court case, they prefer a more amicable approach. They specifically mention retail ADR and the European Commission online dispute resolution platform as options.
It's a way to resolve disagreements in a more informal and cost-effective manner, often involving a neutral third party who helps facilitate a resolution.
But if you're in the United States, get ready for a different game altogether. Binding arbitration. It's like agreeing to settle things behind closed doors, with a neutral arbitrator making the final decision.
And here's a key detail for our U.S. listeners. There's a class action waiver in the terms. This means you're giving up your right to participate in a class action lawsuit against Soho House.
Ooh, so no banding together with other disgruntled members to take on the Soho House legal team.
Exactly. If you have a dispute, you're going it alone. It's a clause that's becoming increasingly common in online terms and conditions, but it's important to understand its implications.
It certainly shifts the power dynamic in favor of the company, making it more difficult for individuals to collectively challenge their practices.
It's a trend worth noting, and one that has significant implications for consumer rights in the digital age.
Okay. We've navigated through the dense legal jingle of the main terms and conditions. But wait, there's more. We've got a whole other set of terms specifically for their apps. Those digital gateways to the exclusive world of Soho House.
It's like entering a club within a club, each with its own set of rules and expectations.
And they even acknowledge right up front that the app store you download from, whether it's Apple's App Store or Google Play, has its own set of terms and conditions. So, you're essentially agreeing to two sets of rules, which can get pretty complicated.
It's like navigating a legal labyrinth, trying to understand how these different agreements intersect and what they mean for you as a user.
But let's break down some of the key points. First of all, they emphasize that the app license is non-transferable and tied to your specific device. So, no sharing your Soho House app love with friends or family members.
It's a way for them to control access and ensure that each user has a unique account tied to their device.
And there's a section on legal compliance where you
yeah.
will, as the user, declare that you're not living in a country that's under any kind of embargo or restriction.
It highlights the global nature of their business
Was.
and the complexities of operating within different legal and political landscapes.
So, if you're trying to access the Soho House app from a location that's on a restricted list, you're out of luck. They're playing by the rules of international trade and diplomacy.
It's a reminder that even a seemingly simple act of downloading an app is intertwined with a web of global regulations and restrictions.
No, before we move on, I have a question that's been bugging me. We've talked about how fiercely Soho House protects its brand and image, how they control content and curate the online experience, but how does this all play out when it comes to younger audiences? I mean, are we talking about a Soho House for kids?
That's a very perceptive question, and the answer is a resounding no. Soho House very explicitly states that their digital platforms are not intended for children under the age of 13.
So, no mini-me Soho House members sipping mocktails by the pool.
Not according to these terms and conditions. And they strongly encourage parents and guardians to monitor their children's online activity and ensure they're not accessing content that's inappropriate.
Which makes sense, considering the exclusive. And let's be honest, sometimes adult-oriented nature of the Soho House brand, it's not exactly a family-friendly environment.
Exactly. They're trying to maintain a certain atmosphere, certain level of sophistication that's not aligned with the needs or interests of younger audiences.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. From the minutia of legal clauses to the broader implications of online terms and conditions. But the journey through Soho House's legal documents isn't over yet. There's one last section we need to explore, and it's one that might surprise you.
Welcome back to our deep dive. We've uncovered a lot about Soho House's terms and conditions, from their control over content to their approach to dispute resolution. Now, we're turning to a section that might raise an eyebrow. For those familiar with Soho House's image, license grant and restrictions.
Okay, license grant and restrictions. Sounds pretty serious. What's the catch here?
Well, it basically outlines the scope of the permission they're giving you to use their app. It's a non-exclusive, non-transferable license, meaning you can't share it or sell it. It's for your personal use, on your device only.
So, no sharing your Soho House app love with friends or setting up a side hustle selling access to their exclusive digital world. That makes sense, but it does highlight their control over every aspect of their digital platform.
Absolutely. They're granting you a very specific and limited right to use their app, and they make it clear that they can revoke that right at any time.
And there's another section that jumps out, the one about representations and warranties. It's where you, as the user, make certain promises to Soho House.
Right. You're basically confirming that you're legally allowed to use the app, that you're not in any country under embargo, and that you're not on any restricted lists. It's all about compliance with international regulations and ensuring they're not inadvertently facilitating any illegal activities.
So, they're covering their bases from a legal standpoint, making sure they're not getting entangled in any international incidents. It's a reminder that even something as seemingly simple as an app operates within a complex web of global rules and restrictions.
Absolutely. Now, Let's step back for a moment and consider what we've learned from this deep dive into Soho House's terms and conditions.
We've gone from the seemingly mundane details of usernames and passwords to the intricacies of copyright law and international regulations. It's been quite a journey.
What's fascinating is how these legal documents, often overlooked and dismissed as boring legalese, actually reveal a lot about Soho House's values, their priorities, and their approach to building and maintaining their brand.
They're fiercely protective of their intellectual property. They go to great lengths to curate the online experience, and they wield considerable control over their digital platforms.
But they also demonstrate a commitment to creating a safe and respectful environment for their members, emphasizing responsible online behavior and compliance with legal requirements.
It's a reminder that even in the seemingly glamorous world of Soho House, with its exclusive members clubs and curated online spaces, there are rules, regulations, and legal realities that shape our interactions.
And ultimately, it's up to each of us as users to be informed, aware, and to engage with these platforms in a way that aligns with our values and protects our interests.
So, the next time you click agree on a set of terms and conditions, whether it's for Soho House or any other online platform, take a moment to pause and consider what you're really signing up for.
It's about empowering yourself with knowledge, understanding the implications of these agreements, and navigating the digital world with confidence and awareness.
Who knows, maybe someday. Armed with this newfound knowledge, you'll be sipping that cocktail by the rooftop pool, fully aware of the intricate legal tapestry that surrounds this exclusive world.
Until then, stay curious, stay informed, and keep exploring the fascinating world behind those digital curtains.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the Soho House terms and conditions. Thanks for joining us on this legal adventure.